Hello and welcome to Ketchin Music Review, where I create a yap fest about albums that I enjoy. Last week, we took a look at the second album by Angine de Poitrine, an act from Quebec that has become very popular in recent times. If you want to hear more about them, go watch my video. But for the second episode, we are not leaving Quebec quite yet, but this time we're covering an act from the same area that was never very popular and now seems to be completely forgotten. And I want to change that because I find music like the kind that we're talking about today to be truly special. Today, I will be going over the first album by Heavy Eye of the Sun. Thought this would be a great starting point into the more obscure kinds of music I like, namely avant garde and drone. So I present to you One by Heavy Eye of the Sun. But first, who are Heavy Eye of the Sun? Well, Heavy Eye of the Sun is a duo comprised of James Shidlowski and Olivier Borzex, formed in Montreal in 2005. When I was writing this episode, the only source for any info about this band was a website that had been defunct since at least 2011. I had to use the Wayback Machine to access this page when I made this, but since then, it's been reinstated. But I'll get to how that happened. I'll link the page in the description, though. Heavy Eye of the Sun formed after James Shidlowski and Olivier Borzex, who for a few months in 2005 were creating input-free electronic noise music as the Black Noise. With Heavy Eye of the Sun, they decided to create a more acoustic project using a vast array of different instruments to create something otherworldly and ethereal. According to James Shidlowski, he had decided to create Heavy Eye of the Sun after he'd found a toy organ from between 1959 and 1960 in the garbage and took it home. When he did so, he found the keys on it were touch sensitive so that the volume of each note would depend on how hard you pressed it. He found that it was slightly out of tune, creating some very interesting interactions between notes. He called this piece Heavy Eyes of the Sun. Later, when playing in Le Black Noise with his friend Olivier Borzex, he showed him this piece he created, and Olivier loved it. So they decided to scrap Le Black Noise and start a new group based around acoustic psychedelic drone compositions. They named it after the James Shidlowski piece that he had created a few months earlier, but along the way, they had removed the S from the eyes in the title. They reworked this original composition into the third track I'll be looking at today, iSun/Solil. They were active from about 2005 to 2008 when they stopped making music together. Since stumbling upon them by chance a few months ago, I knew it was the group I needed to cover. I hope to make this a series with episodes on their second and third album too. But today, we'll be looking at their first album, aptly titled One. The album starts with the track Forest of Symbols. This track starts with an occasional scratch on the side of a cymbal, which as the track goes on becomes more and more frequent. As the cymbal playing speeds up, you start to hear the resonant frequencies build up inside of it. Around the 3-minute mark, either a second cymbal starts being played or it's being looped on itself. I'm not really sure, but whatever they're doing, it makes this simple cymbal playing from before become increasingly overwhelming and all-encompassing. And this just keeps going on for the next 10 minutes. The cymbal noises seemingly reverberating inside of your brain, transporting you to the world they're trying to create here. Around 11 minutes in, they start to slow down. The resonant frequencies die off until we're left with silence. To me, this track reminded me of The Buildings They Are Sleeping Now, which is the last part of Static off of Godspeed You Black Emperor's Lift Your Skinny Fists Like a Tennis to Heaven, which, let me go grab that one real quick. Yeah, like The Buildings They Are Sleeping Now from Lift Your Skinny Fists Like a Tennis to Heaven by Godspeed You Black Emperor. Or any of the things Tom Nunn was creating when he was alive. I think this is a great track and a great opener to this album. Next, we have Comme des Nougat dans un Fleuve. Sorry, I don't speak French, but that translates into English as light clouds in a river. This track starts with Olivier trying to play a short little melody on a prepared banjo, but seemingly playing it differently every time. When he does this, James starts playing on an acoustic guitar with a bow, creating this noise I couldn't identify in my rough draft for this script. About a minute in, Olivier locks in on a melody while the acoustic guitar continues to get louder. Then they keep this up for the rest of the track, allowing you to completely lose yourself in it. About halfway through, James lets go of the bow and starts playing the guitar normally, adding what are almost bass lines to the melody we have been hearing repeated all this time so far. Right when I'd accepted this is what I'd be hearing for the rest of the track's runtime is when the guitar gets put down and the banjo player starts strumming notes very quickly, only kind of adhering to the established melody. Then James picks the bow back up and they start harmonizing over it with their voices. Like the first half, they keep this going for about 8 minutes before why did I write that? Before James stops and we get some banjo closing out the track. To finish this album, we have the piece that started it all, I Sun / Soleil. This track starts the single tone from the toy organ fading in as another tone ever so slightly lower plays over it, creating a very dissonant sound. As the piece goes on, they keep adding layers to this drone, increasing the dissonances and uneven interactions of notes, and causing an unrelenting sense of anxiety in the listener. To many, this would be a reason to dislike Heavy Eye of the Sun, but for me personally, I love it when artists try to make the listener uncomfortable. I find music like that to be rewarding in some kind of way. And also, I just like how it sounds. Anyway, halfway through, you get some vocal tones over the drone, starting out as occasional singing from Olivier, but eventually becoming a part of the drone itself, as howls and screams from both members get added to the mix. Eventually, they quiet down, leaving a single chord left, with an occasional discordant tone peeking through. I'm a huge sucker for drone music of all kinds, as you know, and this track really scratches that itch in a way many don't. I will say, you are experiencing this track incorrectly if you are playing it while doing work or driving or reading or whatever. The correct way to experience this track is to be laying down in your bed with the lights off. Maybe hugging a pillow or something. Then, as you slowly drift off, the sound almost becomes a part of you, like you are one with it. In your twilight hours, on the verge of sleep, being able to move at rest is the So that was the first Heavy Eye the Sun album. I love albums like this one that you could just put on and lose yourself in it. It's a feeling I always seem to seek. Maybe it has to do with my autism or something, but I love music like this that allows you to dissociate from everything around you and you experience the same kind of stimulation perpetually for long periods of time. It's why music projects like Natural Snow Buildings or Mighty Old Redwood appeal to me. It's something I try to create in my own music. You may be wondering how I even found Salm in the first place. After all, they seem to have made no splash at all, even in a niche online drone music scene I seem to inhabit. Until recently, the only webpage with any info about them was a random site that had been down for almost as long as I've been alive. If you search Heavy Eye of the Sun on YouTube, the only three results are uploads of their albums that were uploaded by me. On Rate Your Music, this album only has 10 ratings, the most recent of which is from 2011. And on their most popular release, 2, it's only been related a few times since 2011, the most recent of which was in 2019. Hell, on Album of the Year, which is the music site I use, I'm literally the only person to have rated anything they have made. The answer comes down to the label that released their third album. Back in March of this year, I needed some ridiculously difficult Herculean task to get through to keep me from going insane. And so I decided to listen to the entire discography of Natural Snow Buildings, who are one of my favorite musical acts of all time. Surprisingly, for a group I like so much, I'd only heard a few of their most popular albums, mainly because their whole discography is about a day and 20 hours of music. But they just had so many more I hadn't heard quite yet, and among those were Slayer and the King of Hell and The Wheel of Sharp Daggers. The album covers of both of these albums stood out to me because their album covers were rectangles instead of squares. If you're anything like me, you would know this means that these were cassette releases. I love albums that were only released on cassettes. When I took a look at the page for these albums, I noticed both of them were on a label I hadn't heard of quite yet, Digitalis Limited. So, I took a look at the catalog and sorted it to see it was being released around the same time as these Natural Snow Buildings albums. By doing this, I found a few albums by a duo I hoped to cover named Ajilska, but I also found the third Heavy Eye the Sun album. Something intrigued me about its album cover. I saw its genres were listed as experimental, avant garde, folk, and ambient. Now I really needed to hear this. So I searched it up on Bandcamp. Nothing. Okay, well then I went on to YouTube. Nothing. So I went to where I go when both Bandcamp and YouTube fails. Soulseek. When I searched Heavy Eye the Sun, I found their second album, and so I downloaded it and gave it a listen. I found this album where two people were really going at guitars and singing over whatever they were doing. I loved this album, and I wanted to hear the other two albums they made, but it seemed the only way I could access them was to pay for a physical copy. Well, I saw someone was selling one of the 80 copies of their third album on Discogs for about $10, so I bought it, and I happen to have it right here. Yes, proud owner. As you can see, I don't know because of my bright ass lighting setup. That's 30 out of 80. Proud owner of this. Look, it even comes with. I'm going way off script here. Comes with a little card and this picture of a scene that I've found myself, just with a lot more grass. And it's in like a 45 case, and of course, that isn't even the album we're talking about today, but needed to get that out there. Um, well, I wasn't gonna pay $23 plus shipping and tax for a single CDR of the album we're looking at today, so I just accepted I wasn't gonna hear it. But once this thing came in the mail, I just checked SoulSeek again because I just want to know if somehow in the month between me finding their second album and getting my hands on this thing, if it actually had appeared there. To my shock, it actually did. And so I gave it a listen. If you want to know my thoughts, just, roll back the time. That's where my original script ends. When I finished writing that, I had no idea who was doing what, given all the info I had about this was that one dead web page that didn't really have much to say. So I found the personal site of James Shedlowski, and I found out that he had connections to some of my favorite avant-garde artists, actually, including Alexandra St. Onge, Anne F. Jock, and most importantly to me, Sam Shalaby, which is insane to me because a lot of his music, especially his album Osama, is partially responsible for my fascination with experimental music in the first place. You know, the Montreal experimental music scene is all connected, it seems. It's kind of weird that I got so deep into it, considering I've never even been to Canada before. Anyway, on his website, he had his email listed, and so I shot him an email with a rough draft of this script and asked him about Heavy Eye the Sun and this album in particular. He told me who was doing what on each of the tracks, and actually reinstated the webpage I was looking at. So, if you want to find it, he also mentioned overdubbing layers of sound, which, I thought it was looping, but I can definitely hear that in the third track, and also how to pronounce their names. Seems like when I was reading this back, I thought it was James Shedlowski. I'm very sorry about that. But I'm not re-recording those. But yeah, thank you so much for all that info, James. It was invaluable. Today, it seems that James Shedlowski, I'll say it again, makes all sorts of art to this day. You should go to his website to check it out. I especially like the collages he made. They seem straight out of cassette covers from the Blogspot scene, or many of the series of collages my grandfather made, like the cover for Severed Circuits and Live at Arcade Paradise, my own albums, or this thing I have sitting right here next to me. Olivier Borzex continues to make music at the underground dance scene. I've heard his EP E-Lane 2 Troy under the name OJPB. It's a pretty fun couple of tracks, even if that kind of like disco and dance music isn't really my thing. But that's all I really wanted to say about this album. It's a special feeling when it feels like you are unearthing something forgotten, and especially so when you end up loving what you found. I find music like this to be very rewarding, and I'm glad that among people who are trying to fit into certain styles, there are people like them who aren't afraid to try different things, resulting in albums like this one, where each track sounds like a different group. I hope you enjoy these kind of underground albums the way I do. I'd also want to give a special thanks to James Shedlowski for all the info on this project. That's it for this episode. Thank you, and the next one will be on Piano Dysfunction by Vista Pacifica.